Boys, we're starting a new series on the channel called Sauce Season. This series is where I'm going to be uploading every single day until the channel hits 100K. Young Dr. Seuss here. In this series, not only are you going to see VFX breakdowns like the one you're seeing on screen, I'm also going to be taking you through my 10 years of experience as a video editor, sharing all the sauce on what I've learned over the years, whether it be VFX, working with clients, how to get more clients, the business side of stuff, other like stuff that you might not even know. Like I worked with Adobe and Netflix on a project and what it was like interacting with bigger brands like that. I'm basically going to be sharing all the sauce, everything I know over my 10-year journey of being a video editor. So make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell ring, because I'm going to be uploading every day. There's a good chance you're going to miss one of those, and you're not going to want to miss one of these videos. But to start off Sauce Season episode 1, we're going to be breaking down this dust glowing effect in the Tomorrow 2 video. It's #1 on trending right now. It's done like 10 million views in like the first like 7 days. So it's a pretty popular video. I saw in the comments a lot of people commenting on the video editing and how dope it was. So shout out Diesel Films and whoever edited this. I'm pretty sure he had someone else edit it. Super dope video. I want to show you how to do it and kind of put my own twist on it. So before we go ahead and recreate this effect, I just want to show you the sequence, kind of what it's going to look like by the time you're done, what this timeline is going to look like, and what you can expect. So basically the whole entire effect is done by a rotoscope. You can see this dust is playing behind the car, and then there's just some shockwaves that are motion tracked to the car and also like 3D aligned with the street here. You can see it's kind of on the same plane as the street, and that's what gives it that cool like motion tracked effect where it doesn't look like there's just an overlay playing. And there's a bunch of effects that I use to sauce up this sequence, make everything blend a little bit better, and I'm going to be going through every single step that I took to get this sequence here in a second. So in a new sequence, you can see this is the default clip with the default coloring, very clean footage. I already went ahead and rotoscoped out the cars in both of the clips. If you don't know how to rotoscope, just give it a YouTube search. It's pretty easy to figure out. I actually went ahead and used Mocha and the mask tool for this clip just because there's like some harsher edges, and sometimes with cars I think it looks a little bit better. So the first thing I did when I was making this effect is I just wanted to regrade the footage a little bit and make it look a little bit more cinematic. So to do that, I brought on Hue and Saturation to the footage, and I'm just going to desaturate it to maybe something around 60, and I'm going to copy and paste that to every single clip, the roto and the background layer of all 4 of these. So now we can see we have just a desaturated looking clip. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to regrade the whole comp. That way when we drag on those dust particles, it's all going to have the same color grade and it's just going to blend it a lot better. And then in Lumetri Color, I'm going to go to Creative, and under Look, I'm going to import my Enhance LUT. And that's just going to add a little bit more contrast in, and it's going to give this whole sequence just a more contrast heavy grade and just make it look cinematic overall. The slightly desaturated grade works really well with this effect because it has the contrast between the desaturated footage and then those crazy like dust colors that we're going to be adding here in a second. So now that we have a really good base, you just have to find some kind of dust particles that also have some kind of glow. I'm going to be using the Cinepax Shockwave pack. I'll have it linked down below. There are plenty of assets like this on the internet, so if you already have some, feel free to use these. I really like the way these look, and I had them on my computer already, so I think this is what I'm going to be using. So all I did was bring in the shockwave layer in between the roto layer and the original background layer. And you can see how it explodes out. I'm going to have it start kind of right there and explode out like this. And just like this, we have an all right effect. I don't like the way it looks. It's not motion tracked. It doesn't feel like it fits the footage at all. So we're going to have to sauce it up. So my first step for this clip is to motion track the shockwave to the car moving. That way it kind of follows it and looks like it's kind of leaving a trail behind. So to do that, we can go up to the tracker window, make sure you're selected on that base layer, and go to track motion. We can use this GTR logo because there's a lot of contrast. You're going to want to find somewhere where there's a lot of contrast, like you can see between the black and this gray here. Just add it in the middle, and we should be able to play this, and it should do a good enough job tracking that we don't really have to worry too much about fixing anything. And a good track will look like this. It'll look fairly consistent, and there won't be any dots that are like way out of line unless the footage is really, really shaky. So once we have that, you can right click down here and create a null object. And the reason we're creating a null object is basically just to store the tracking data onto. That way it makes the workflow a little easier. We're going to go here and click edit target, and then we're going to go and locate that null object we just made. So you can see it says null 6 here. So I'm using null 6. It doesn't matter what the number of your null is, just do the one you just added. And then after that, just click apply. Just make sure it's selected X and Y, and then click OK. And then once we've done that, it will do absolutely nothing. So until we go to the shockwave and click this pick whip tool, you should see it's a little spiral, and you drag it to the null, it won't be motion tracked. But now it is. Now that we see parent link and it says null 6 here, after you did the pick whip, it is now motion tracked. So we're going to go through, turn on motion blur, and we're also going to, on the layer of the shockwave, turn on motion blur. When we play that, you can see it follows the car a little bit more. It's not too noticeable noticeable because the clip is very big and the car's not moving too much. But trust me, once we go ahead and position everything and make it look a little bit more realistic, it will help out a lot. I'm also going to go here and click the 3D layer. If you don't see that, you can go to toggle switches and modes until that comes up. And then let's go ahead and fully expand the transform options here. So for this clip, I want it to be flush with the street, kind of looking like it's expanding on the street. So to do that, we're going to have to go to our X rotation, and you can see it's kind of making it on the same plane. And we're going to also change the Z position. That way it stretches out this way. And it just takes a little bit of tweaking. You can see we now bring it a little bit more flat, bring it down here. Go ahead and play that and see what that looks like. That looks like it's actually on the street. Pretty good so far. There's a lot more blending stuff we have to do, but it does look a lot better already. Now let's go ahead and keyframe the scale, position, and opacity. And we're going to scale this so it fits inside of the car. It doesn't matter if it shows a little bit because we're also going to change the opacity to 0. And then let's go like 10 frames forward, change the opacity to 100 first, and then scale this out to whatever we like. So now when we play that, it expands out like this. Basically, you just want to make sure it's not like going over anything that looks unrealistic. So if it was like up here, it would look really weird in our clip because it's going over like this barrier. But as long as it's flush with the street, and you can see I'm looking back here as well so it doesn't go over this tree line. Those little things you might not notice as a viewer, but it does feel off even when you're looking at it and you don't know exactly what you're looking at. Let's go to toggle switches and modes until we see the mode here. And let's change that blending mode to add. That's just going to make the blending mode look a little bit more transparent, and it looks a little too bright right now, but we're going to go ahead and blend that with the color and also some glow. So the first effect I'm going to drag on here is Hue and Saturation, and this is just going to allow you to change the color to whatever you like. Let's go ahead and do like that purplish, and we can actually keyframe that, and let's keyframe the channel range, and we have it set at 175 here. If you're following along, and have Shockwave 7 as well, and then we can go all the way to the end and just make it a little bit more purplish pink. That way, as the time goes on, it goes from like this bluish purple to a more pinkish purple towards the end. I'm going to press U and just easy ease all of these keyframes by clicking F9 on your keyboard. Just going to make everything look a little bit more smooth overall. And then one thing that's going to help blend a lot is adding any kind of glow. I'm going to be using Deep Glow. It's a third-party plugin, but I think it's super, super worth it. It's my personal favorite glow. There's Sapphire Glow as well. That's also third-party. But if you don't have any of those plugins, you can use the normal glow built into After Effects. Just type in glow. It's going to come up. Changing the threshold to like around 50. That way it only affects the brighter areas and it's not affecting the whole entire clip. We'll just make it look a lot better. I'm also going to go to tint, add on tint, and instead of red, we're going to match the color. And you can see here, it's a little bright and kind of looks out of place. And I noticed the footage actually gets dimmer the later it goes on. I'm going to drag these keyframes pretty much all the way to the end of the clip and just have it start a little bit later. And basically what that's going to do is just have it start a little bit later in the shockwave. That way it's just dimmer overall throughout the whole entire clip. And you can see it dissipates a little bit faster. I think that just looks better for this clip. We can also add some directional blur. Even though we have the motion blur already checked and it's kind of expanding out, I think it's cool to add directional blur, and we can go ahead and change the blur length. You just start off, I don't know, maybe around 25, and then as it expands out, we can go like 10, 15 frames out and have it reset to 0. And as you notice, it's going horizontal because we changed the X and Y rotation of the actual clip. It says it's supposed to be vertical right now, but it's actually not. So we can change that to 90, and now you can see the motion blur will be more vertical based. And that just gives it a more sense of like it's moving even after it stops moving, just to give that kind of illusion of blending a bit more. Now let's go ahead and drag on actually the exact same shockwave. We can line it up so it happens at the exact same time too. And we're going to do motion blur, 3D layer, and also pick whip it to that null object again. That way it's motion tracked. And let's go ahead and open up the transform options of this one. You can go through, use any kind of particles. Like I said, if you already have some, use that. In the CinePacks pack that's linked below, there's plenty of different options to go through. We're going to use a few different ones later here, but let's go ahead and keyframe the position, scale, and opacity. I want to start it off kind of hidden behind the car again, so that way it explodes out. Let's go hide it behind the car, drag it down a bit, and then go 10 frames forward just like before. Definitely scale it up a lot. We can bring it up so it's kind of above the car, filling out this other area, and also scale it, change the position a bit. And let's go ahead and mess with the 3D settings. We don't have to keyframe them, just change them a bit. That way it just has like a little bit more like angle to it. I don't know. You don't really have to. I just think it looks kind of cool when you do. And we can kind of like hide this car back here because it looks a little, feel like it's ruining the clip a bit. So let's go ahead and hide it like that. And since it's the exact same shockwave from the other clip, we're actually just going to copy and paste the hue and saturation, deep glow, and directional blur onto the new shockwave. And that way it has a very similar look. And you can see it looks different, and that's only because we forgot to change it to add. And once we change that color to add, you can see we now have a very similar shockwave, and it's looking really good. Now everything's looking a lot better already, but we want to make it feel like these pixels are actually here. So if we add some kind of glow to the car just to match that blue tint, it's going to help out a lot, even if it's just something really, really little. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that deep glow onto our car layer, and that might be a little too intense off the start. Let's go ahead and see right at like frame 10, right where it explodes. And let's change this color to a blue to match that, maybe a little bit lighter, and click OK. And we're definitely gonna have to bring down this number a lot. Now let's keyframe that exposure. You start off at 0 and then also kind of end around the same time it ends. So let's end it here. I'm also gonna go into the graph editor and just have it take a little bit longer to start the glow, just because I don't think it should have too much glow at the beginning. And then let's just match the glow throughout, maybe have it hold a bit longer. And just adding that little glow onto the car goes a long way. It makes the whole clip feel like the pixels are actually there and just blends the footage a lot more. That's one thing that's like really, really important with VFX, is just kind of blending your effects to make them feel like they're actually there, even though they're not. So for this footage, instead of rotoscoping, I actually used a mocha just to get these more angular areas. So like I said, we're going to be using different overlays this time. Let's go ahead and drag on particle. I think this is 13. It has like this kind of like tail expanding out, and I think that looks really cool. Let's go ahead and just have it start a bit later. We can go ahead and trim that and drag it below the car. And for this clip, when I was doing it, I found that I didn't really need to motion track. I could just keyframe the position, scale, and opacity. And then all I'm going to do is go all the way to the end. And you can see kind of how later on it breaks away from the hood of the car. Let's go ahead and just keyframe it there. And it kind of looks like the car's almost driving over these pixels, which is really cool. And one thing that's going to help out a lot is also adding this motion blur. And then let's go ahead and add in the other one as well, which is pixel 10. This kind of looks like a tail almost trailing off. We're gonna have it start probably right there and then just trail off towards the end. I'm gonna put it around the tail of the car. Bring it below our roto layer. We're gonna need to scale this down a lot and start it off here, maybe scale it up a bit, and just like that. Now let's keyframe the position, scale, and opacity again. And then all I wanna do is just have it follow the tail of the car. Looks like the car gets a little further, so the car would get smaller, so that smoke would also get a little smaller. So let's now go ahead and add these both to add, and then add on that hue and saturation again. Since they are different colors, it might be a little bit harder to match, but it shouldn't be too big of an issue. You can just eyeball it, or you can have them different colors. It doesn't really matter too much. That's looking pretty close. And then we can add on deep glow, or whatever glow you were using before. Let's go ahead and add on that deep glow to our roto layer. And actually, because I used a mask instead of a roto, we're just going to quickly have to pre-compose this, move all attributes into there, and then we can just close out of there. And it's gonna allow us now a cleaner mask, and it's not gonna have those rough edges. So let's go and change the tint to match. And when you're doing this on your own clip, you can spend more time tweaking it. In the first example that I showed, basically the only difference between this and the actual example is just I spent a little bit more time matching the colors, keyframing stuff, and just changing the values to get what I want. This is 99% of the way there. Now we're just gonna go ahead and sauce up this whole entire sequence, add a little bit of shake, a little bit more color grading, some blur, some grain, just all that stuff. This is the real sauce that's gonna help the effect take it to that next level. It's like that 1 extra percent that you add at the end is gonna make it like 100 times better. Let's go ahead, pre-compose all of this. So basically what that does is it makes all of the clips into one layer. That way, when we drag on an effect like another color grade or some RSMB or anything like that, it's going to now have it affect everything in the whole entire clip. So let's start with RSMB and drag that onto our footage. We're gonna leave that completely alone after we drag that on. All we're gonna do, we're also gonna open up some Lumetri color. And I'm just gonna add a slight grade. We're gonna be using, let's use teal and orange. Obviously that is a lot, so we're gonna have to turn it down. And then let's add something like Sapphire Shake. This is what's gonna give it the energy and the appearance of like that hit that I had in the first sequence. We can go to the beginning, keyframe the amplitude and the Z distance, and also make sure the motion blur is checked. I'm gonna turn down that frequency to something like 3-ish. And let's go ahead and keyframe the amplitude to 0 at the beginning. Go to basically 10 frames in, right where the dust particles like fully expand. And we can bring that amplitude to like 3 or something, maybe a little bit less. That looks pretty intense. Just whatever looks best for us. And we're gonna change that Z distance to like 0.8. That way it zooms in a bit, a little bit out more, and make the amplitude 0. And then let's find where that clip transitions to the next one. I think it's somewhere around here. And then just go to the last frame here. I'm gonna bring that Z distance all the way back up to 1. That way it just kind of throughout the whole entire sequence zoomed in here, and then it's just slowly zooming out throughout. And let's go ahead and easy ease all of this and see what that looks like. And I want that shake to come in a little bit more intense. You can see it kind of like ramps up here. So I'm just gonna highlight all of the amplitude keyframes and go to the graph editor, and we are going to make it so it takes a little bit longer for that initial shake to come in. That way it kind of just hits out of nowhere, and then we can have that slowly fade out, kind of how it has. And let's have it fade out a little bit more aggressively than we actually had. You can spend all day making sure the keyframes are perfect, but for the sake of tutorial, I think this looks pretty good. You can see it has a pretty good shake. And let's go ahead and add on Sapphire Grant. This is just going to be another effect that's going to blend the whole entire clip together a little bit more, kind of like that color grade and the RSMB. Pretty much everything that we're adding on here is just one final blending layer that's going to just make the effect look a little bit better. And there is a preset that is from Sapphire that I really like that's default with Sapphire. I think it's called, yeah, it's this one right here, called Take It With. I'm just going to load that one in. It's pretty subtle. You can see the grain's pretty small. And then lastly, by the time I got to this point in making the effect, I was pretty much done with it already. I wanted to transition between the two clips. So what I used is I used a preset from my motion warp pack called Spiral This That Sauce. Basically, all you have to do is drag it onto that pre-composed layer. Click U so you see those keyframes, and actually we lined it up perfectly first try, but all you'd have to do is line up the middle set of keyframes right where the clip transitions. That way it transitions to the clip in the middle. This transition is a little bit more intense on your computer. If you're having a hard time rendering it, just go to motion tile up here and change the output width and height from 500 to 200. It might not look exactly the same and as good, but it will do the job, and it'll also make it way less intense on your computer. And then once that's rendered out, that's exactly how I did the whole entire sequence. That's how I went from A to Z, making this whole entire effect sequence. Like I said, I'm going to be uploading every single day until I hit 100K. We're calling it the sauce season. So be sure to be subscribed, ring that notification bell. If you haven't already, like the video, drop a comment on a video tutorial you might like to see. If you see a video idea that you like in the comments, just go ahead and like that comment. That way I know that's a good video idea and I could do it for the next video. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys in this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Peace.